All right, let's continue with more reaction. Now we speak to Emma Powell, DAMP, Shadow Minister of International Relations and Cooperation. Emma, thank you so much for your time this evening. We've been speaking to various parties about, in fact, this particular ruling and their reaction to this ruling. And one of the analysts we spoke to says that, and I quote, if the court wanted to order Israel to stop its military operation in Gaza, it would have. In fact, this judgment is more of the same. How do you respond to today's judgment?
Hi, evening. Thanks for having me. So I think that it's clear that the ICJ has essentially asked that Israel take measures to minimize civilian casualties and to, of course, report to the court within a month in terms of what measures they are implementing to ensure that a contravention of the Genocide Convention does not take place. It is certainly not what the South African government requested of the ICJ, but we do believe that it will go some way in potentially protecting or guarding against the loss of further civilian life. The DA obviously mourns the loss of any innocent life that has been brought about in this conflict, but I don't think that this is necessarily what the South African government was asking for, nor is it the victory they are claiming it to be.
All right, for you then, in your view, do you think that then this is not a moment that South Africa should pat itself on the back?
Well, I think that they've certainly the ANC have gotten a lot of political mileage out of this. I think that the scale of civilian casualties that are unfolding in Palestine is of great concern. We know that more than 20,000 civilians have been killed. That said, we do know that Hamas is internationally regarded as a terrorist organization and that they frequently use civilians as human shields. We know that they hide amongst civilians. And so it's very difficult for the Israeli Defense Forces to conduct any military operations within Gaza if Hamas are hiding amongst civilian populations. I think that it is indeed something that needs to be considered, that Israel should, of course, be using, as it says, that it is using every available measure to guard against civilian casualties.
But has it, pardon me, Emma, has it though? To date, when you look at how this operation has unfolded, has Israel done that?
So we can only judge on the basis of the facts that are presented from both sides. So we know that we've got a population of over 2 million. We know that according to the Gazan Health Ministry, that is of course run by illegitimate government Hamas, they last held an election in 2006, that 27,000 people have been killed. That's 27,000 people too many. However, this is war, and after the scale of the brutal attacks that have been well documented on the 7th of October, including Hamas's very well stated and established resolution to essentially eradicate the Israeli state, that Hamas do indeed need to be neutralized. Now, that needs to be done in a manner that safeguards against civilian casualties, and we abhor the loss of any life. I think that it can only be positive, of course, that a government would have to report on what measures it's taking to ameliorate against the loss of further civilian life. But until such time as fresh elections are held in Palestine and that a democratically elected government is sworn in to serve the Palestinian people, that is recognized internationally, I think that this conflict will continue and until we see the measures that we today have called for being implemented, which of course include Hamas disarming, fresh elections being held, the Israeli government recommitting to a two-state solution, and then of course, as the ICJ ruled, that all civilian hostages be returned and that the IDF take every available precaution and measure to guard against continued civilian casualties.
As a final question then, very briefly, do you support then the calls? Tonight we're speaking to a human rights lawyer from Israel and also, others who are saying that in a statement from the South African Jewish Board of Deputies, who are saying that they want to also amp up the pressure on the South African government to also back the calls for the freedom of the hostages.
Absolutely, and I think that's something that was very positive that came out of today's judgment for the people of Israel and our Jewish community, was that the court did indeed speak to Hamas immediately returning all of those hostages. We have children amongst those hostages, innocent women, babies. And until such time as the hostages are returned, there can be no peace. This war would end if Hamas returned the hostages and disarmed. It really is that simple. And then, of course, in light of Benjamin Netanyahu's statements last Thursday night, which we, of course, issued a statement rejecting, we urge the Israeli government to recommit to a two-state solution in line with the United Nations Security Council resolutions 242 and 338. And those, of course, speak to the 1967 borders.
All right, let me thank you so much for your time, Emma. Do appreciate that reaction. That is Emma Powell, DA MP, Shadow Minister of International Relations and Cooperation.